千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Zi. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. So misfortune and fortune, 祸与福. How do we tell which is which? When we encounter something that happens in life, we're pretty sure we know if it's good or bad. Or are we? Here's the challenge: to elevate ourselves, elevate our thinking to the next level. Let's go through some examples. You will see what I mean. Let's think about one of the most important things of all, love. Let's think about marriage versus divorce. Of course, people look at this, people will say, well, marriage, that's a good thing. I love weddings. I like it when people get together, spend their lives, build their lives together. That's a good thing. Divorce, well, that's tough on everybody. It's tough on the kids. It's tough on the spouse, the two partners. So that's got to be negative. When you ask people that, you can expect the first impression to be marriage is positive, divorce is negative. But the same people, okay, that you ask the same question to in many years from now, after many years, they may actually give you the opposite answer based on their own personal experience. Can that happen? Yes, it can. Someone can, for instance, go into a marriage only to become very unhappy. The marriage may be dysfunctional. It may be devoid of love. It may be abusive. Marriage by itself isn't obligated to be either good or bad. It just is. It's dependent on what the two sides put into it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a positive thing. To be married isn't necessarily good fortune. It could be misfortune. I think you are beginning to see that. So we have to train our thoughts, train our minds to think in the Tao paradigm. In that paradigm, you look at divorce, you look at what most people consider to be negative, and right off the bat, you're going to start thinking about the possibility for the other side. When you do that, see, there's a reason why I put the yin and yang symbol in this slide. You are training yourself to think like a Tao sage in noting that in the yin and yang symbol, within the yin, there is a yang. Within the yang, there is a yin. So within the positive, there's always going to be the potential for negative. Within the negative, there's always going to be the potential for the positive. So divorce, usually seen as negative, but is it really? Well, from the way you are now being trained to think, you can realize that there's going to be scenarios where divorce is liberating. That is actually a positive thing. When you get out of a dysfunctional relationship, maybe even an abusive relationship, it can only be for the better. So you don't need to get to the marriage level to see the truth of this. You can stay just at the dating relationship level, Relationship versus breakup. Everybody wants a relationship. People think that's a positive thing. People think of a breakup as something tragic. Now, in many cases, indeed, relationship can be beautiful, positive, loving, supportive. In many cases, breakup can be heartbreaking, literally. It can be something that's sad, something that's tragic. But does it always have to be that way? No. In the Tao paradigm, you are now training yourself to think of all the possibilities, to look at it through the eyes of the Tao. In that view, relationship can also be dysfunctional. It can also be abusive. Yeah, we've seen that. The breakup, that too has the possibility of becoming liberating if you're leaving a bad situation. Okay, so I want to use this very personal example to illustrate how things can flip around back and forth, depending on the situation, depending on the perspective. That's the Tao. Let's take a look at more. Other than love, let's take a look at work. So think about, say, job offer versus losing job. We think of job offer as a good thing because we think of employment opportunity as a good thing, and we think of losing a job as a bad thing. Now, you can easily see that job offer, well, that could be the job offer for a job where you will become very unhappy, that your potential will not be able to fully express itself. Losing a job can be a good thing because it can free you up to pursue what would be better for you, whether it's your own thing or a different career path that's better. So of course, now we can see the possibilities. Yin and yang, gain versus loss, same thing. We usually look at gain as a positive thing. People usually think of gain as good. But let me describe a scenario. Think about a gambler who has won a hand. That's gain right there. In this scenario, having won a hand makes him think he's on a hot streak. So he bets everything to take advantage of the hot streak and proceeds to lose his shirt. So the gain was actually not too great at all. What about loss? We think of loss as a bad thing. Yeah. So for instance, suppose there's a businessman who tries to make a big deal happen, but it falls apart. That's a bad thing. That's a loss. Yes, people certainly think of it that way. It's a misfortune. But what if, as a result of this great loss, the businessman learns, number one, the true color of the business associates, who he can and cannot trust. Some of them have stabbed him in the back to cause this great loss. Now he knows. Now he knows that there are certain people he cannot trust. And perhaps he learns how to recognize the trustworthiness in individuals. And as a result of this experience, suppose he learns how to recognize a bad deal, how to recognize the red flags, the warning signs. This is knowledge that will serve him well in future deals. So it's actually a good thing. And what about an investor who lost big when the market crashed? A bad thing, a misfortune. But what if, as a result of this great loss, the investor learns the proper way to manage his assets? He realizes that he was not diversifying enough, that he did not look at some key metrics before making a decision, that he did not pay attention to market indicators. Suppose he learns as a result of this, and it will serve him well in future investment endeavors. Perhaps by virtue of the great loss, let's just say he went from wealth to poverty. Perhaps he learns how to do more with less. Perhaps for the first time, he learns how to live the simple life. Maybe initially, he has to live the simple life because he has no choice. He lost everything. But then perhaps later on, he continues to live the simple life because he enjoys it. Wow, he has learned something of great value. Great value not in terms of stock prices, but great value in life. So just a little bit more, you begin to see how the thinking of the Tao goes. So what about the self? Other than love, other than work, what about just yourself? So let me suggest a situation. Suppose you are very creative, but your creativity doesn't get the recognition it deserves. What can happen? Now, when I talk about these different scenarios, I want to note that sometimes by linguistic convention in English, I refer to businessmen, that's a male gender, he, gambler, etc. But I think everyone understands I'm talking about a universal individual that can be male or female. Here, it's a little bit easier when I talk about the self. Some of the pronouns that I'll use are gender neutral. So for instance, let's talk about lack of recognition. Suppose the creativity is expressing itself as writing the great American novel. You're a novelist. The novelist is collecting rejection slips, not getting recognition. Perhaps the novel is really good. Perhaps the novel is great. And yet, there's no recognition. So that could be a negative thing, right? Or you may have struggling actors whose brilliance in acting is not recognized. Or you don't even have to be a novelist or actor, just in general. You've done something great. You've done something that's innovative. People don't understand. People dismiss it outright. Wouldn't that be frustrating? So that would be misfortune. But what if, instead of defeating you, it makes you realize that, with my creative expressions, I really just need to satisfy myself. I don't need to satisfy anyone else. Maybe you come to the realization that I don't actually need external approval. I mean, what for? I can free myself from the expectations and demands of other people. It's incredibly liberating. And what if this realization takes you to a creative breakthrough? Great fortune. Very positive. Doesn't have to be creative endeavors. As I said, here we're talking about universal principles that apply to everything. So let's just do one last one. Getting sick. We certainly would see that as a bad thing. Nobody wants to get sick. Nobody wants to be ill. But what if, instead of damaging you, the illness makes you come upon realizations, such as, I need to slow down. I've been pushing myself too hard for too long, and I caused this problem for myself. I need to slow down. That is a benefit to yourself. Perhaps you think, I've been too attached to particular goals. I need to let them go. I'm stressing myself out for no particularly good reason. I've been pursuing those material things. And I know that ultimately, at the end of my life, I'm going to look upon those material things as empty accomplishments. Indeed, perhaps I'm realizing as a result of this illness that life is finite. Life is limited. I've been taking it for granted. From now on, after I get better, it's not going to be the same situation anymore. I'm going to cherish every day of my life, knowing that I don't have a whole lot more. So I need to live for myself and my family, not for my job, not for the pursuit of the material things. That is a great realization that you can use in your life. Now we're going to talk about the line as an entity by itself. Line 5 says, misfortune is what fortune depends upon. What does that mean? Okay, well, here's how we can interpret that. Misfortune and fortune are usually thought of as separate and different. In the West, we have a tendency to pigeonhole the two, good luck, bad luck, as separate, one versus the other. In the Tao, it's different. We recognize that they can be the ups and downs of life, much like a roller coaster ride. So when you go up, you must also at some point come down. And as you are rushing down, at some point, you're going to be going back up. So they're not diametrically opposite, these two descriptions. The reality is that they are connected states. They transition from one to the other. The easiest way to see that is with the visual. As you see here, when you visualize the roller coaster, misfortune and fortune continuously transition or transform into one another. It's never always downhill. It's never always uphill. It's always a mixture of the two. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.